As the band Survivor once explained, East meets West, two worlds collide, and that's happening today in Anchorage, Alaska. Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network Live Desk. I'm Robert McNeely, and that's a place I'm very used to seeing, the Chugach region outside of Anchorage and the Cook Inlet as well. And it is a beautiful place in the entire world. Once called Seward's Folly, it's rather smart that we purchased for 2 cents an acre, way back in the 19th century, this massive piece of land. If you lay it on the lower 48, as the Alaskans call it, you will go from Charleston, South Carolina, all the way towards those Aleutian Islands past Los Angeles, California. It engulfs all of the lower 48. Just to give you a visual of that, if you have not been to this amazing showcase of God's glory in the Great White Way known as Anchorage, Alaska. Now, President Trump to meet with President Putin of the Russian Federation. We will have all of that for you in unbridled coverage today. So stick with us, 2 broadcasts, and we will cover all of this, which could mean truly world peace. And in a way, it's a shame that the legacy media has been so focused on this. This has been crucial because President Trump, as you'll hear from a moment from the press gaggle on Air Force One, has said this is not good for his health. Simply, he wants the killing to stop. He has remained the most consistent against the neocon and neoliberal agenda and the massive calamity that the auto pen caused. Because we know if President Trump had rightfully been reelected in 2020, Vladimir Putin would have never invaded Ukraine. That is a cold, hard fact. Because whether it was George W. Bush, Barack Hussein Obama, or the auto pen, Vladimir Putin was unafraid to take territories like Crimea and to move into their western borders and their former Soviet territories. Now we'll see what happens here because Ukraine is unwilling to give up any land. We know the Russians do want those ports and to control those areas in the Black Sea for trade. Their economy is in very deep trouble. And President Trump has promised secondary tariffs that will be at the rate of 100 or more % in this process. So we'll see what the two have to negotiate. There are some reports they may be speaking for a long time later on in this evening. So to give you an updated time on this, Anchorage, Alaska, 4 hours behind East Coast time. So they are 9:32 a.m. So good morning to all those in Alaska that might be watching, just an hour behind the Pacific time zone and that golden state of California. So something interesting, when I was spending a lot of time there covering local media at KTUU in Alaska, Alaska's news source, there's a lot that they relate with Seattle, Washington. In fact, Alaska Airlines is actually headquartered in Seattle, Washington, and many of those who grow up in Alaska end up going down to Seattle in order to find more work and just to be in the lower 48. But just to think about that plane ride and how far up north you go, it's about 3.5 hours or so from the Seattle airport flying into Anchorage, Alaska, just to give you an idea of that geography and just how far north it is up there. But it's really a paradise year-round for those who enjoy the outdoors. And whether it's the Iditarod to the long summers, which they are experiencing right now, there are plenty of fun places to see in Anchorage, Alaska, including the Bear Paw and Moose's Tooth, which is their spot to go for pizza. It's not quite like Chicago pizza, but it's rather good. And they are incredible at craft beer. So some fun facts there for you in Anchorage, Alaska, as President Trump will meet with the Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin. The first meeting, in fact, they've had since the G20. And they will be talking terms of perhaps a peace to be brokered between Russia and Ukraine. And as President Trump has been very clear about this, the United States really has no stake in the game other than the president and this administration wants peace. Look at what they've achieved over the course of 200 plus days. Israel and Iran at peace. Most of the Muslim and Arab world, in fact, partnering with Israel not only in trade, but doing what's right in regards to the Hamas invasion, the Hezbollah attack on the Israelites as well. So you have the whole Arab and Muslim world really reaching out in defense of their existence and the encroachment of the Iranian government. Go to Cambodia and Thailand, or India and Pakistan. There's been peace brokered by this president throughout the world because he's been willing to walk away, not only slapping tariffs on these other countries, but said we won't trade in the first place if you continue these wars. Think about the worst conflict since World War II in terms of loss of life. Over 6 million people in 35 years or more of fighting between tribal warfare within the Congo and Rwanda. That came to an end, and African nations coming to the Oval Office to celebrate with President Trump. And now countless voices from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the government of Pakistan to Claudia Tenney in New York, other congressmen, senators, an echo and a chorus for this president to win the Nobel Peace Prize. But for those who are simply not paying attention or listening to legacy media, they might not be aware of what successes he has had because you see so much of this Russia hoax still being pushed out by some in the media. And this is why there's so much attention on this very vital, important part of the world. 1 million people plus losing their lives between Russia and Ukraine, civilian and military, because of the acts of Vladimir Putin. So we look forward to covering this for you all day. Stick with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Did you know that Bank of America just announced that the United States dollar is on the verge of collapse? Think about that. Your savings, your retirement, your paycheck, all losing value faster than ever. Now, history tells us when paper money fails, precious metals win the day. So go to RSBN for thegold.com. It's monetary gold that will help you survive all of the chaos that could be happening through the world. Even this meeting today can cause monetary and paper money to change and inflation to go up as a result of what's being discussed. Now, gold and silver have been the ultimate store of value for 5,000 years. That's why now you have to call Monetary Gold, and do not delay. Call today, 800-476-7790. Call immediately to discover how you can eliminate IRA fees permanently. Thank you to Monetary Gold for sponsoring us here on the right side of history, and to All Family Pharmacy, our dear friends over at this online pharmacy committed to you, the American people. Ivermectin, mebendazole, now 25% off. Use code RSBN10 for an extra 10% off. Scan that QR code now because you want freedom to choose your treatment, but you don't have a doctor or someone who will prescribe it for you, because the PBMs, we know that they're having influence over these other pharmacies, these standalones. These are insurance companies that want to double dip. You need All Family Pharmacy because they carry life-saving medication. 200 plus essential medications, in fact, that can be a lifesaver against bacterial and viral infections. You can take them on the road with you during your summer vacations. Now, once they are approved, it's no red tape, no insurance, there's no hassle. Just need a prescription and a doctor to work with you on this. These great pharmacists here are committed to make that happen for you. You'll get these life-saving medications in roughly 2 to 3 days. Now, their goal is simple, to put your health back into your hands because you need that treatment. You shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get it. So ivermectin, mebendazole, 25% off with our code RSBN10 to get the additional 10% off your entire order, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. And President Trump, speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, he took off approximately early this morning, around that 7 or 8 o'clock mark there, as it's roughly about a 7.5 hour trip from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And this beautiful land was once Russian territory, and it was called Seward's Folly. William Seward, the Secretary of State under Abraham Lincoln, wanting to bring this once territory into the United States, and that proved to be something so smart to do for the low price at the time of 2 cents an acre. And not only for the oil and mineral qualities and the wildlife, the fishing, so many natural resources coming from Alaska. We've seen that with the Keystone Pipeline, but also the fact that it was a huge thing for the Cold War and our defense with the Pacific Fleet. So it's crucial that we have this beautiful state of Alaska way up north next to Canada and right next to Russia, its former motherland. We have the press gaggle for you to get an idea of what President Trump is thinking about on his way to Anchorage, Alaska.
They're buying our weapons, and we're sending them to NATO, and NATO's sending us big, beautiful checks. But that I don't care about that. I care about, it was a big factor when Biden spent $350 billion and got nothing. But what I do care about is they lost last week, 7,011 people were lost, almost all soldiers. 36 people in a town which got hit by a missile, but over 7,000 soldiers. It's crazy.
Can you describe a little bit, Mr. President, because I know you've had a lot of phone calls with President Putin. What's the difference in a face-to-face, in-person meeting?
Look, he's a smart guy, been doing it for a long time, but so have I. Been doing it for a long time. And here we are, we're president. That was much more difficult than what I'm doing today, believe me. So we get along. There's a good respect level on both sides. And I think, something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia. And that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled.
Are you going to talk about business?
Will you talk business? We have the hottest country on earth. We have the hottest economy on earth. We have the hottest country. We just set a new stock market record again. We have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing in from tariffs. We're the hottest. We were a dead country, dead like doornails, a dead country. 1 year ago, we were dead as a doornail, and now we have the hottest country. And he wants a piece of that because his country is not hot economically. In fact, it's the opposite. And China's not doing well economically, but look, I want everybody to do well. The war's got to stop and the killing's got to stop.
Mr. President, what do you stop? Thank you for coming back to take questions. We saw that Russia continued its violence into Ukraine last night, launching even more drones. What did you make of that?
I think they're trying to negotiate. He's trying to set a stage. I mean, in his mind, that helps him make a better deal. It actually hurts him. But in his mind, that helps him make a better deal if they can continue the killing. Maybe it's a part of the world. Maybe it's just his fabric, his genes, his genetics. But he thinks that makes him, gives him strength in negotiating. I think it hurts him, but I'll be talking to him about it later.
On the table for discussions today, Mr. President, are the territorial swaps on the table? Will you be discussing that?
They'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table. And I think you have two sides. Look, Vladimir Putin wanted to take all of Ukraine. If I wasn't president, he would right now be taking all of Ukraine. But he's not going to do it.
Mr. President, what did you mean?
Just one thing. What about the possibility of the United States providing security guarantees to Ukraine?
Maybe. Along with Europe and other countries. Not in the form of NATO, because that's not going to, there are certain things that aren't going to happen. But, along with Europe, there's a possibility of that.
Mixing the number of business people that President Putin is bringing along, is that something that you want to discuss with President Putin at this meeting?
Yeah, if we make progress, I would discuss it, because that's one of the things that they would like. They'd like to get a piece of what I built in terms of the economy. Just so you know, we were a dead country with our economy. He wouldn't be interested. He wouldn't have been interested a year ago with the Biden economy. But he is interested in the Trump economy because wait till you see when those factories start opening up. We have hundreds of factories all over the country, and that includes auto factories, AI factories, and every other. They're all coming in because they want to beat the tariffs. Because if they open here, they don't have to pay tariffs. If they don't open here, they have to pay, in some cases, 200%, 300%. I haven't even set some of the tariffs yet. I'll be setting tariffs next week and the week after on steel and on, I would say, chips. Chips and semiconductors we'll be setting sometime next week, week after.
What rate are you looking at? What rate?
Well, I'm going to have a rate that is going to be lower at the beginning. Then that gives them a chance to come in and build, and very high after a certain period of time. And if they don't build here, they have to pay a very high tariff, which doesn't work, so they'll come and build.
Mr. President, hi. You had said earlier...
I didn't see over
You do
there.
that with me.
Isn't he a gentleman? He's a nice.
He's helping me out.
He's a very nice. He's one of the few nice ones, actually.
You had said earlier this week that Putin would face severe consequences if you get the sense from him that he's not interested. What do you mean by that?
Economically severe. Yes, it will be very severe. I'm not doing this for my health, okay? I don't need it. I'd like to focus on our country, but I'm doing this to save a lot of lives. Yeah, very severe. Thank you very much, everybody.
Mr. President.
One thing.
And right along that Cook Inlet, I used to run right along that path there. You can actually see Mount McKinley from there. So it's roughly another several hours by car and roughly 30 or so minutes by plane, as we're joined now by Kelvin King, Republican candidate for Secretary of State of the Peach State of Georgia. Thank you for joining us, sir. And let's dive into what's a big day in American foreign policy. President Trump meeting with President Putin in Anchorage, Alaska. You are an Air Force veteran of the Air Force Academy, someone who knows a thing or two about diplomacy. What are your thoughts on today and how big this might be for potentially world peace?
Well, I think it's huge. You know, I think peace was attempted a couple different times between Russia and Ukraine, and things never really worked out. And I think by sitting down directly with Putin, I think Donald Trump is able to really put his charm and put his strength and show what our American intentions are, and be able to make some progress towards peace. I think meeting in Alaska is great. You know, we're only about 50 miles or so from Russia, and I don't think most people know that. So that's an isolated location. There won't be a whole lot of crazies around them, and they can really focus on getting to the heart of the matter. So I think it's a great idea, and I think we're going to have some progress. I'm optimistic about it.
It is a very optimistic time in a golden era for America, and that has an effect on the midterm elections. You've decided to dive in, recently announcing your candidacy for Secretary of State in Georgia. And is it your view that so goes Georgia, so goes the nation, with so many different constitutional offices coming down to new leadership as Governor Brian Kemp is term limited in 2026?
Yeah, I don't think it's just my view. I think it's the view of the RNC. The RNC has spent a lot of time in Georgia. There's a handful of states that matters the most. And when I was speaking with the head of the RNC just a month or so ago, he said, well, Georgia is ground zero. So I think a lot of attention from this administration is going to be focused on Georgia. And, you know, obviously a lot of our constitutional offices are up for election this next year, 2026. And the top of the ticket will be Senate and governor. I think we're starting to see a little bit of that fight currently, but Lieutenant Governor and Secretary of State are right there with them, and you know those seats are very powerful. In fact, Secretary of State's seat is probably the third most powerful seat, and the second most powerful executive seat in the state of Georgia. And I think that people need to take this race very seriously. I think the administration is. The Secretary of State controls not just business licensing and not just business formations, but also securities and elections. And that's going to be the top item on people's minds here in Georgia because of what happened in 2020 and some of the distrust that was sowed throughout the citizens here in Georgia. I think elections is going to be really the topic that's going to take the day this election cycle.
And please share with us what a Secretary of State's office does and how it does have that influence, but also how to regain the trust of citizens. Because even when I covered local Alaska politics, Kelvin, there was an issue with the ranked choice voting coming about in 2020 and 2021. And with all of that happening, both sides were saying, hey, there's too much time for voting, or it wasn't fair on my side. And then you have Republicans and Democrats going at each other's throats because you have these close elections that sometimes go to court. And you know the process. It could be quite something to watch as the other side is saying about one another, hey, it was not fair.
I don't think ranked choice is going to gain a lot of traction here. I do think that people need to recognize and realize how much influence the Secretary of State does have on our elections. The Secretary of State's role is to oversee our elections across the state, even though every county actually executes their elections independently. So we have 159 counties here in Georgia, one of the most out of any state in the country. And that opens it up for a lot of different, interpretations of how you execute elections. So it's that much more important for the Secretary of State's influence and guidance and leadership to be there. And because we have so much distrust in our elections here in Georgia, because we don't know, for instance, in Fulton County, one of our largest populated counties, we don't have the ability to do thorough audits, meaning we don't have ballot images. Because there's so much distrust when it comes to our elections, it means that leadership matters more now than ever before. Unfortunately, our current administration and our Secretary of State's office, they've basically blown off about 10% of our voting population here in Georgia. And that's the 10% that's questioning our elections. All we need and all they're looking for is transparency. Secure elections, transparent elections will provide the type of faith or reestablish the type of faith that's needed. And that's not being done right now in the state of Georgia. In fact, our administration looks down on those 10%. I don't want to repeat the word that was used by the COO of our current administration, but he called them dumb blanks. And you work for us. We're the electorate. If we're not understanding something properly, it's up to you to explain and show and teach and train. And that's what's been missing in our office.
I want to stick on this topic with you, Mr. Kelvin King, running for Secretary of State in Georgia. We're going to a quick break for a sponsorship read, but please stay with us, as angelpaste.com is truly that miracle cream that you need right now. I've tried it here right on the show. It's vitamin B infused, non-GMO, no chemicals, very healthy for your skin. And it's important to know what's going on to make America healthy again, ultimately, especially what you put on your body. It is something that is so essential in the summertime as well. A lot of people don't know Alaska has really big mosquitoes come June and even into August. So you want that natural mosquito repellent and a facial spray to paint the town red. So go see that miracle out of Spring, Texas. Angelpaste.com off the Gulf of America. Also, CovePure.com. Utah and Florida recently putting legislation out there in order to make sure fluoride and the chemicals, the pesticides, get out of your pure drinking water. And now JAMA has researched this with doctors and other pediatricians, and they found that those children actually consuming tap water actually lose 2 or more points in their IQ as a result of all those pesticides, the fluorides. So what can Cove Pure do about this? Well, they have a clear water technology that takes out 99.9% of the impurities, and it sits nicely right there on your counter, as you can see, or in your den. So covepure.com/RSBN wants to take care of you. Drink pure, live pure, and it's $200 off right now. A great sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. And again, we are joined by Mr. Kelvin King, who is a Republican candidate for Secretary of State in Georgia. And I'd like to ask you, sir, on what we were talking about with that integrity, with making sure that it's one vote per one citizen. Do you find that Georgia should go back to some form of the paper ballots? Are the machines okay? Should we shorten or even expand that length of voting and that period of time with the early voting time frame?
Well, I think in terms of the amount of time for the early voting, I do think it's a bit extreme. I think it can be shortened. I don't think Georgians will really push back on that. That's not necessarily a Secretary of State's duty. That's more legislative, but I will get behind something like that. Now, in terms of our current system, we use a machine called Dominion machines. And there's a lot of loss in faith and trust in those machines. And I'm a big fan of technology, but when it comes to our votes, that's one of the most sacred things we have in America. I want to make sure that we're able to vote accurately and securely. And if we need to go to hand-marked paper ballots, I'm a huge proponent of that. I do support that. And the reason why is because it provides auditability. So if something goes wrong, you can always go back and you can count the paper. Now we can do a hybrid model. I proposed a hybrid model, meaning we do machine tabulations, but there should always be the ability to go back and verify through paper what actually happened in our elections. And the reason why I say that is because there's documented erroneous behavior, and there's documented irregularities. There's a small city here in Hall County, which is part of Metro Atlanta, where there were 600 ballots sent out to the wrong people. They weren't in the proper district for a city council race. 300 of those ballots were actually voted on, and the outcome of the election was the delta was only 88 votes. Now you tell me how fair that is, and you tell me how accurate and secure that is. That's a problem. And fortunately, the local election office proposed or reported this to the Secretary of State's office, and nothing was done, unfortunately. And then they decided to self-report to the State Elections Board. That's how important that is, and that's how much integrity a lot of these county offices have. And we need to mimic that integrity in our state Secretary of State's office, and I don't think it's mimicked right now. And in terms of the Dominion machines, I just don't trust what's happening because we don't have that auditable type of paper. So what I would like to do as a former procurement officer, I was a contracting officer in the Air Force, I would like to re-procure that contract. I want to go through it line by line and figure out how can we improve this contract, and if not, how can we re-procure? And there's been, I guess there's been some legislators who are saying, well, if we end that contract, it's going to cost Georgia $100 million. And I think that goes back to competency. Why can't we have competent people procuring our contracts? My background is contracting, and I know you have to do market research. I know you have to compare scopes of work. I know you have to have exit clauses that are not penalty clauses for the government, and none of that was done. So there's a problem in our office, and I look forward to fixing that.
And that's what seems to make a lot of sense, Kelvin, in this process, having business people go into government because they might have a different approach to those bureaucrats who have been there for a long period of time. Now, we're going into a midterm of 2026 that perhaps we can get that message out to more Republicans or those who never voted Republican in the past. And now you don't have President Trump, who drew out so much support in his 3 elections, but you have his policies at the top of the ballot. You've been a leader in Georgia, really expanding that message of common sense conservatism to different voters that never considered themselves to be Republicans, maybe in the first place, or were apolitical to begin with. And we've seen a lot of that in the last decade of people, whether thanks to Barack Obama or Donald Trump, have come into the fold of politics because of their candidacies. How do you intend to get that message out there as a Secretary of State candidate?
Yeah, I think that is a strength of my candidacy. I actually ran for U.S. Senate here a couple years ago, the 2022 election cycle, and we did something that was had never been done before, unheard of. We campaigned in all 159 counties in one election cycle, and we did it in 29 days. I know that sounds crazy, but we were crazy focused on making sure that the people of Georgia had a chance to actually touch and hear and have a conversation with who was trying to represent them. And what I learned from that tour across the state of Georgia is that we're more alike than we are different. And what I mean is that families in Georgia, what they want is have secure and safe environments to raise their family. They want to be able to educate their kids as well as they can and how they want them to be educated. And they want to be able to make a living in this state. And to me, that permeates Republican, Democrats. It covers all Georgians. And that is a uniting type of message. And I think the Secretary of State's office is number one in making that happen, because not just elections, but because we are also responsible for the licensing processes and the business formation processes, and actually teaching and coaching how business development occurs. We directly affect our economy and the ability to families to raise their families and make a living for their families. So this seat is crucial. This seat covers all Georgians. Then this seat is going to be won by the Kelvin King candidacy, only because we care about the people, and we care about the truth, and we're going to bring that to every single state, county, and every single community as we embark upon this campaign.
And so many new residents of Georgia, including yours truly, given the fact that that business environment is good, it's good people, it's really a classic Southern charm that still exists in the Peach State. So for some fun, Kelvin, I don't think a lot of people know, but you played football at Air Force Academy, so it seems to be a qualification for Southern candidates. I'm just kidding there, but you have Alabama and Georgia with plenty of former football players on the ballot this upcoming midterm. Give us a forecast of fall football season as we are in Auburn, Alabama, big fans of the Tigers, War Eagle, of course. What do you think is going to happen throughout the scope of college football? And do you intend to see any, Senator Tommy Tuberville running for governor of Alabama? We've heard some from Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones running for governor of Georgia regarding NIL, that new structure. There might be some legislation, either state or federally, to address all of these things. Give us your forecast of college football going into the future.
Well, I think the SEC is going to be strong, continually strong. As you can tell, in Georgia, football does matter. I ran against a Heisman Trophy winner in Herschel Walker, who won our primary but did not carry the ball across the goal line for the general. And there's actually a football coach who is the son of the great Vince Dooley that just announced his candidacy here in Georgia for U.S. Senate as well, Derek Dooley. I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but football is big. And as you mentioned, Burt Jones is one of the leading candidates for our governor's race, and he played football for the University of Georgia as well. So, yeah, football is big in Georgia, and I'm just thankful that I was able to carry that same flag at the Air Force Academy. Now, I don't think football really matters much when it comes to executing policy and serving our government. But it is fun to talk about some of the things that's going on right now, particularly, like you said, the NIL. I think it's changed college sports. I think it's changed college sports permanently. And I can't say it's for the better, to be frank with you. I'm very concerned about where it's going. Like, where is it going to stop? Right now, the conversation is about continual college sports, meaning you can play college at the college level forever. And, because they're paid, and it would be somewhat of a discriminatory practice if you ended someone's income because they graduated college. And it's just an interesting topic that's being bounced around in the world of sports right now. But I'm going to fall back into more a conservative position. I think amateur sports it should be amateur sports. I think college should be amateur sports. And I think the NIL is complicating that whole world right now.
Well, Kelvin King, thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon on Right Side Broadcasting, our live desk. Please keep us updated on different events and come back to see us as you go through really the next year and a half on the campaign trail. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's a family matter. So our thoughts and prayers are with your entire team in this process as you seek to serve the good people of Georgia. Where can we find all of your campaign and information forthcoming in case people want to get involved?
Thank you, Bobby. Thanks for having me. You can go to a one-stop shop. Go to kelvinking.com. That's KELVINKING.com. You can follow us on social media there. You can volunteer, and make sure you share share our campaign, share it with your friends, your family, and help us cross the finish line.
Amen, my friend. We'll see you very soon, and have a wonderful weekend. God bless you and yours. We'll see you back here on Right Side Broadcasting very soon.
Thanks for having me, Bobby. You take care. All the best.
And as we cover a big day here at Right Side Broadcasting Network with great interviews, great candidates, and your great president in Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska specifically, with that overcast day. You can get that in the summertime there, as I once covered local politics in this beautiful municipality. Roughly 40% of the state actually lives in Anchorage, and one of our sponsors is actually doing a big hit and question on today's meeting between President Trump and President Vladimir Putin of the Russian Federation. Kalshi.com/RSBN. That is a live look right now at the website. So if you go there, KALSHI.com/RSBN, who will attend President Trump and President Putin's meeting in Alaska on August 15th. That's today. Will others be involved in it, including Caroline Leavitt and Pete Hegseth, other people, other staff, cabinet members in this great country? Will Zelensky make a last-minute drop-in? Will anyone from NATO be in there? Will the word nuclear be used to discuss the future of these great nations? Will Trump and Putin shake hands for at least 3 seconds? It's down to the nitty-gritty with these questions. Look, there's a 71% chance it's going to happen. What say you? Scan the QR code now, Kalshi.com/RSBN for all of the trading and the betting on this wonderful Friday, August 15th, a historical day for America, for the world, and God willing, peace will be negotiated and those terms reached with the deal maker in chief, President Donald Trump. Thank you also to Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN. Settle those back taxes today. Protect yourself from the IRS. So call today. Please do not delay, because sometimes it can be fearful. Say you opened a business and all the numbers are scattered over the course of the last year. You didn't file those taxes, and then you worry about reaching out to the IRS, or vice versa. And trust me, if it's the other way around, it will be worse. 800-357-1415. Protect yourself from the IRS. Settle those back taxes now. Visit tnusa.com/RSBN. 800-357-1415. Do so today and have that peace of mind. It's what the Patriot experts at Tax Network USA, as we see our Air Force ready. That's really close to J-Bear as well. And J-Bear, a big military installation in Anchorage, Alaska. And it is great to just sit there along that Cook Inlet and enjoy not only the beauty, but you'll see commercial flights coming in. You'll see our Air Force and our military doing dogfights, and every once in a while, the B-12 bombers. It's really quite a sight to see over J-Bear in Anchorage, Alaska, as President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin will hold a historic meeting to potentially end the Ukrainian war that has taken place over the last 3.5 years. And breaking news right now, President Trump is in Alaskan airspace. He should be touching down relatively soon in Anchorage, Alaska, at that J-Bear site. And we will see this red carpet literally rolled out on the base. Alaska 2025. We always know that it's a star-studded event. President Trump knows a thing or two about hospitality and really making a point. And it looks as if this will be something that will be very hospitable but forthcoming with the discussions. As you heard from that playback of the press gaggle, and there it is there, J-Bear's grid and sign there. Just photos of coming across now of Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump. And there, of course, UK Prime Minister Starmer with President Zelensky of Ukraine. This has been something on the minds of most Americans and something in the media over the course of the last several years. And truly, we've come to see that was a famous night right there. President Trump, Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Pete Hegseth, the SecDef, who handled the Iranian and Israel conflict, ending that rather swiftly within the 12 days war. So a beautiful thing to see this president willing to use peace through strength in order to get the mission done. And that was something that was stated by NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, the former Dutch Prime Minister, that this president is wanting peace with the entire world, but he's also willing to use that strength. And it's something that Vladimir Putin deeply respects. He responds to strength. He's not someone who wanted to deal with pushovers like Barack Hussein Obama and the auto pen, because they did not know how to negotiate, including under George W. Bush, another Republican president, who allowed Crimea to be obtained and invaded while he was president. Vladimir Putin did not fear them. He fears President Donald Trump, and I think deeply respects him. As President Trump has said during the press gaggle on the way to Alaska, that there's a mutual amount of respect. We get along, and that's how it should be, even though you have vast differences on a number of different issues. And this may play out to be quite a long meeting today, but we'll be here with you for it. two broadcasts coming up. So stay with us really all the rest of the afternoon into the early evening as this develops. We could have a very big deal later today, a peace deal potentially, to finally end this terrible Ukrainian war. So this is where it stands without us knowing exact terms for President Trump, the American team, also President Putin and the Russian Federation, and then in the mix, the Ukrainians and Vladimir Zelensky. Well, let's go back to when he visited the White House. And a dear friend of ours said, do you own a suit? And it was a great question because it's almost as if Zelensky has been playing this character as he once did when he was doing the comedy and improv stuff. Nothing that I put down necessarily. I once did some improv. It's a lot of fun, but how did this guy end up becoming president of Ukraine? Seems as if he was a puppet for a number of deep state globalists. Regardless of where you stand on that, President Trump was very poignant with him as he was extraordinarily rude in the Oval Office towards our team, towards our vice president and our defense apparatus. And President Trump said, look, you don't have the cards. And the Ukrainians really admirably fighting, but that's mostly because of the assistance of this president and how tough he was giving them javelins way back when this war broke out in the first term. And as he put it, Barack Obama gave them blankets and President Trump gave them the javelins to defend themselves in the process. And now what was slightly a turn in American foreign policy was Patriot missiles being made available, but at a price, at a purchase by Europe through NATO, in order to make sure that the killing stops. Because President Trump has been on the phone countless times with President Putin, and according to President Trump, it's Putin who says, I want peace, and all of a sudden he'll strike with drones or missiles intended targeting actually nursing homes in civilian areas, which is just an absolute tragedy. And his own military had to dig up areas and trenches around Chernobyl where that nuclear waste still exists, and many of them getting sick, dying as a result of it. So we've had over 1 million Ukrainians and Russians, civilian and military, perish because of this stalemate war. Now, the Ukrainians stand that they will not give up or cede any land, but again, we'll see what happens in all of this discussion, as we believe that President Putin was hell-bent on taking back all of Ukraine, but it's been proven that it simply cannot be done militarily. The Ukrainians have fought valiantly in all of this. And there are some Russian areas now secure in that Black Sea, in those areas, those ports that were once in Russian territory, even prior to the Soviet Union. So we'll see how this all breaks down. And if there is no peace, President Trump has promised 100% secondary tariffs immediately on a very weak Russian economy. So stick with us all today, as breaking news could very much happen. So what does this mean for you and for your wallet and the great candidates like Kelvin King in Georgia running in 2026? Well, it means protecting your wallet. Grab your complimentary presidential gold guide now. Call today. Do not delay. 800-476-7790. It's monetary gold, wealth, security, and preservation. Ask how to eliminate your annual IRA fees for life by going to RSBN4thegold.com, one of our newest sponsors here on the right side of history. Call immediately to discover how you can eliminate IRA fees permanently. RSBN4thegold.com, 800-476-7790. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history. And when you're financially set, make sure your health is taken care of as well. 25% off ivermectin mebendazole, code RSBN10. That's RSBN10 for an extra 10% off. Now, Michael Kunzler, who we interviewed just yesterday and should be able to play at some point today, really goes into detail about how important these life-saving medications are for you and your family. They are the online pharmacy taking on PBMs. They believe in medical freedom. They don't think insurance companies should also double dip into the pharmacy down the road that might not prescribe you life-saving ivermectin, mebendazole, NAD+, methylene blue. Many of these now being researched scaling back against cancer and those terrible diseases that cut short Americans' lives. So visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. It's no red tape, it's no bureaucracy. You will get these life-saving medications in 2 to 3 days if you order right now. So it's 2:15 Eastern, give or take, on the East Coast. It's 10:15 in the morning in Anchorage, Alaska. If you order right now, you can get those medications in 24 hours, at the latest 2 to 3 days. And that's with a prescription. But if you don't have insurance, there's no hassle, there's no worry. It's pharmacists who care about you. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. If you are just joining us now, we are covering this summit between President Trump and President Putin. Something relatively long overdue, but there was back and forth. They were on the phone a lot over the course of 200 and plus days. And this was a meeting that President Putin did ask for. But President Trump said it has to be done on my turf, on our soil. So let's, I guess, meet halfway in Anchorage, Alaska, a former territory of the Russian country. But we obtained that way back in the 18th century. They called it Seward's Folly. There's even a restaurant in Anchorage, Alaska named Seward's Folly. A great place to go, actually, to enjoy local fare. If you're a big fisherman, hunter, this is paradise in Alaska, especially catching all of those several different species of salmon. It's quite a sight to see. And some of the best beer you'll have in the entire country. Some of the best breweries are in Anchorage, Alaska. I know that because I used to cover local politics in this beautiful municipality. But it's a year-round paradise, especially if you like outdoor sports and skiing, the Iditarod with the, of course, the dog races that are up there in March. So something every American should see in their lifetime. It's a beautiful state, and the 49th state, in fact. So it's something that we're very proud of. Coming into the Union in 1959. Actually, what's so interesting about our country, think about this. You have Georgia, for example, one of the original 13 colonies. Their House of Representatives, actually older than the Declaration of Independence, coming into session in 1776, right before the ratification of the Declaration of Independence. But the state constitution of Alaska, 1959, you can still meet the same people who signed and authored that state constitution. So we have a special place to call home here in the United States of America. As it looks there, we might be getting a picture of Air Force One. As it gets closer, we will go in on that. We do know that President Trump is in Anchorage, Alaska airspace as they make the approach. You will get to see your 45th and 47th Commander-in-Chief in real time. And that looks like that is Air Force One, roughly a 7.5-hour trip from our federal city and Joint Base Andrews to J-Bear, the Alaskan base that is very famous for, actually home to all of our branches of the military, but our Air Force dominating that J-Bear, where they do their dogfights, where they do their trainings, and where they make sure that the Pacific Fleet has air support and trains against all threats around the world. And Alaska, really crucial to not only global trade via plane, but also for our national security. And that came into play, especially during the Cold War. So again, it once was called Seward's Folly. Why would you buy all this land for 2 cents an acre? Well, that really paid off for the United States in oil reserves, in the Keystone Pipeline, in mineral reserves, in its natural wonders, and also now to serve as a location for a peace negotiation between President Trump and President Putin. And as the President of the United States has stated with this is really not America's game here. This is not the administration's ultimate decision. He really is going to be the broker in this to help assist, as he's been so successful with the Peace Through Strength movement, and he truly deserves the Nobel Peace Prize, as has been echoed by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, with President Trump's assistance in stopping that war with Iran and knocking out their nuclear program within a matter of minutes. A 36-hour trip, round trip for our bombers who went into Iranian airspace undetected, mind you. No surface-to-air missiles. It was clean on both sides. We're the only country in the world that can do that, in fact. So it's an incredible position of strength to have. Also ending the Congo and Rwanda's terrible tribal warfare that killed countless. Millions, in fact, the bloodiest conflict since World War II in the entire world. Thailand and Cambodia stopping their exchange of arms. India and Pakistan not moving towards what could have been a nuclear conflict, all because of this president. And 200 plus days into this second term, I think I realized how much danger we were in under the auto pen and that inept administration. That in many cases, I do believe they were inept bureaucrats, but it's also proving to be what could be treasonous in their actions from the prior administration under Barack Hussein Obama and Russia, that hoax. That's something, Vladimir Putin is not a good guy, but his country went through a lot when the deep state decided to claim that President Trump was somehow a puppet of Putin. Nothing could be further from the truth. We know this from Devin Nunes. We know now that Senator Adam Schiff, when he was on the Intelligence Committee with Devin Nunes, both gentlemen from California, that Adam Schiff was putting out potentially fake intelligence and spreading those rumors throughout the media. And he could never prove what he was claiming to say, hey, it's true, it's true. Just look at the plot against the president, Lee Smith's amazing book, which became a documentary film that you really need to watch about the deep state's attempt to take down a duly elected, constitutionally sound president, Donald John Trump. Now, thank you to our sponsors on the right side of history, angelpaste.com. Experience the miracle that is angelpaste.com, the vitamin B infused OG Miracle Cream. They also have a mosquito repellent, which actually comes into play in Alaska. They have some of the biggest mosquitoes I've ever seen. You might think, oh my gosh, it's so far up north. How do mosquitoes last there? Well, in the Chugach mountain region, you can actually walk up it. It's a beautiful hike. And you look back down and you realize that this town of roughly 270,000 or so, this municipality, it's the largest land municipality in the entire country, is surrounded by forest. So something smart to have if you take that trip to Alaska. And Angel Paste is based out of Spring, Texas in the Houston Metroplex off of the Gulf of America. So they know a thing or two about those mosquitoes as well as a facial spray to go paint the town red. Something good for the guys and gals, whether it's the wedding anniversary or your first date. Nice to have to look Star-Spangled Banner-esque. Experience the miracle today. At angelpaste.com, they have amazing different topical treatments that are healthy to put on your body. Now, speaking of healthy, covepure.com/RSBN. Get the machine that protects what matters most. Drink pure, live pure. It's not even as big as the coffee machine you perhaps have in your kitchen or in your office den. covepure.com/RSBN, $200 off right now. Utah and Florida actually putting legislation forward to get rid of fluoride, pesticides, and chemicals in the water. And now Cove Pure's technology, it's called Clear Water Technology, takes out 99.9% of the impurities in your water. Why does this matter? Well, JAMA Pediatrics actually did a study with their pediatricians and their doctors and their scientists that children regularly drinking out of the tap actually lose over 2 points of their IQ as a result of doing that. So we know that things like sodium fluoride, they're in most toothpaste, but you shouldn't have to ingest fluoride unless you choose to. So you should drink. You deserve clean, pure water. We know what happened in places like Flint, Michigan. This is 2025 in America. You should have clean water. covepure.com/RSBN. Your go-to for that reverse osmosis system. It should be in every home in America. Get $200 off right now. covepure.com/RSBN. Drink pure, live pure. As one of the purest areas, these waters here in Alaska, something that is just quite refreshing. And it will be refreshing to see if President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin are finally able to bring peace terms and to end this Ukrainian war. Now, it seems as if the Russian Federation is serious about that, as Air Force One is approaching this rather glorious scene here of our fighter jets and the ultimate carrier of the President of the United States, Air Force One, landing at J-Bear, the very impressive Air Force Base in Anchorage, Alaska. And I really like that podium, Alaska 2025. We know that President Trump has touched down there with Air Force One. We'll wait on reports if Russian President Vladimir Putin, who should be following relatively soon, will be on the ground as well. So we'll take you right there for President Trump to get off of Air Force One. Now, in addition to President Trump's visit here just yesterday, he was able to really protect Social Security in the process of getting these different executive orders signed to protect what is so crucial for the American people, delivering on this promise for those who have put so much into this and who are expecting these benefits as they get up into that retirement age. While Democrats flail and peddle lies about Social Security, President Trump is demonstrating his unbreakable commitment to protecting and strengthening the vital program for the nearly 72 million Americans who benefit from it by massively improving the customer service experience through technological improvements, preventing illegal aliens from accessing those benefits, something we've seen in the last several years, and delivering no taxes on Social Security through the One Big Beautiful Bill. President Trump has made Social Security great again, according to White House Assistant Press Secretary Liz Houston. Now, President Trump repeatedly promised to preserve and protect Social Security for every eligible American and has unquestionably delivered on this Social Security promise as it's celebrating its 90th anniversary of existence to improve the customer service, the technology apparatus, and efficiency, something that's been on the mind of many Americans for quicker access and greater value to being the beneficiaries of its services. Now, this includes President Trump making good on his no tax on Social Security campaign promise. Thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill, now the law of the land, the vast majority of seniors receiving Social Security will no longer pay taxes on that income. President Trump has transformed customer service around the Social Security apparatus. This agency is handling 70% more calls than last year while lowering the average speed of answer by 80%, from 30 minutes to just 6 minutes. And isn't that irritating when you're looking at any service, especially when it's something regarding your benefits or even medical and you have to sit there on the phone and wait and wait? It could be a real pain. As we break down all of those facts, let's take a live look here now and go into Air Force One to see President Trump, who we are anticipating to exit the plane in just a moment.
Alaska? Get some hikes in?
No, not at all.
Not too tall?
Okay, kids inside. Oh, what's up, kid? What was that? Said watch out for bears. I've been on looking. I was just gonna say what's up.
He's in the zone.
I know. Locked in.
As the kid said.
Kate. Kate. Huh? Nah, yeah, I'm up with this Kate. Yeah, because I mean, we got no shot. Nobody's gonna have a shot of the handshake. If they're not here, we're not gonna have a shot of the handshake. We're huh? Because they're blocking the shot. The Russian cars are blocking the shot. Handshake was gonna happen at the point. No, it's at the T now. Is that the T? Okay. All right. All right. You got a shot at that. Oh, look at them.
No, if we're going to talk from there, well, no, we'll bring you around and take the break off and we'll go in the water and we'll also go and we'll take you to the set up.
How we doing? Good to see you, man. How's your week? You get any hikes in? Again.
That wouldn't be the first time I grabbed somebody's legs.
Excuse me? We were trying to wonder the same thing.
Just the world one.
I guess. Makes me feel better, I guess. Whatever helps you sleep tonight. I'm sure that Mr. President was looking for that specifically.
How are you? So when you I'll squat.
And as we await President Trump to come off of Air Force One and meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin, break down what happened this week, especially in case you missed it yesterday with Social Security reforms happening in the form of executive orders in that meeting in the Oval Office. Now, improved use of technology has enabled 90% of calls to the national line to be served via automated self-service options or callbacks, further minimizing those hold times. And the average customer wait times at field offices have declined by 23%, while 5 times as many visitors have scheduled appointments compared to last year alone. All field offices are fully staffed, with employees returning to the office 5 days a week for the first time in years to better serve the American people. And this is post-COVID that took place in 2020 and 2021. Social Security has made vast technology improvements. Americans now have 24/7, 365 access to their online accounts by reducing the long-standing scheduled outcome time of 29 hours per week to 0, enabling over 280,000 more customers to access their online accounts in the first 2 weeks alone. Now, a new recording and transcription system to replace antiquated hardware is near full implementation, increasing accuracy and saving millions of dollars per year. Innovative upgrades to phone technology has been deployed to 92% of field offices. So it's that common sense that we have been showcasing here at this network in 200 plus days. But this idea of accountability of business people, of those who actually had deadlines like President Trump once did when he hosted The Apprentice and built an amazing Trump organization, the leader in hospitality, hotels, and the golf world. We've seen that on full display during this second term. Social Security has been driven down backlogs and delivered ahead of schedule. There has been a 26% reduction in the backing of initial disability claims from its all-time high just last year, while the average processing time has been cut down by 5 days and the average wait time for disability hearing has gone down and been cut by 60 days on average. Over 3.1 million payments totaling more than $17 billion were sent to eligible beneficiaries under the Social Security Fairness Act 5 months ahead of schedule. Now, Social Security itself has dramatically increased accountability. The agency has identified more than $1 billion in cost avoidance and efficiencies this fiscal year. The agency has addressed billions of dollars in improper payments, and after years of delay, Social Security is rolling out new payroll information and an exchange that will transmit information directly from payroll providers, saving billions of dollars in payments over the course of the last decade. Now, as President Trump took care of that domestically, he has had quite a week, stating back on Monday, in case you missed it, that press conference of the home rule being enacted within the federal city of the District of Columbia to make it safe once again, and ICE posting pictures, posting its operations, and federal forces securing what has been just an absolute travesty in our nation's capital. Between 2018 and 2023, in fact, 547% increase in carjackings. And we've seen this among teenagers. And Judge Dean Pirro, now the U.S. Attorney in D.C., stating that it's weak law enforcement of the local municipality and the city council and the mayor, Muriel Bowser, who has caused all this, either not enforcing the law or simply giving people a slap on the wrist. For example, if they are minors, giving them rehabilitation, not charging them as adults in these very terrible, violent crimes, whether it be attempted murder, attempted robbery, the carjackings. You know, sadly, even if they are minors, they need to learn the consequence of doing such horrible things to people. And one, in fact, back in 2018, that taxi cab driver that ended up crashing and dying as a result of a 13 and 14-year-old trying to carjack the vehicle. Should not happen in America, especially in our nation's capital, so we can celebrate all the beautiful history and our government, the meetings that take place there to make America healthy, safe, and great again. That was followed by a Janine Pirro's press conference diving deep into the numbers and just what her office will do in order to keep law enforcement safe and to keep the residents and those who work there safe, including our media, including our cabinet, and including this great president who, as he put it in the press gaggle on the way to Anchorage, Alaska, with those press on board, man, this is not good for my health, but I'm here to help stop the killing, to broker that peace, and to be that deal maker in chief. And we've seen that nearly on a daily basis with this extraordinary president. You want the freedom to choose your own treatment. You want the freedom, the right to try, quite frankly. And you could do that with ivermectin, mebendazole, all provided by allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Get that additional 10% off with code RSBN10. And ivermectin, mebendazole going for that 25% off now. Such a great deal thanks to Michael Kunzler, the fantastic co-owner of this fine organization. All you need is All Family Pharmacy. They carry these medications, not only ivermectin and mebendazole, but NAD+, methylene blue, and 200 plus essential medications that can save you and your family from bacterial and viral attacks. Now, more than this, doctors might not prescribe this, or the PBMs, the insurance companies that own other pharmacies and standalones, might not have this in supply. This online pharmacy cuts through that red tape, the bureaucracy, and gives it to you, the American people, with a prescription, of course, in order to protect you from viral and bacterial infections. Now, you can get these orders shipped within 2 to 3 days, in some cases 24 hours. Their goal is simple, to put your health back into your control and into your hands, because when you need treatment, you shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get it. So allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, providing that best path with ivermectin and mebendazole, as well as emergency medical kits and antibiotics. 200 essential medications there for you. Use code RSBN10 and get some great savings and stock up that medicine cabinet. Also, you could take these medications on the road with you. There is another plane entering Anchorage, Alaska's airspace, and that could be the president of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, to meet with President Trump. Perhaps why President Trump is still aboard Air Force One to meet and greet President Putin, who they have not seen each other for some period of time. It was back in the first term, but have been on the phone a lot over the course of the first 200 days back in the White House in the second term of the Trump administration. So to give a backlog on history to this, let's rewind to President Vladimir Zelensky of the Ukraine coming to visit President Trump in the Oval Office. And President Trump said, frankly, you don't have the cards. And to walk in here after meeting with Democrats and act all tough and act like I need this, I need that, to have a demand list after how good the Trump administration, especially in the first term, was to Ukraine with the mineral trades, with giving them javelins, as he put it. Barack Obama gave them blankets in the process. And we know that under George W. Bush and Barack Hussein Obama and the auto pen, Russia has always taken advantage of moving in on former Soviet territory or former Russian territory prior to the Ukraine being an independent nation, and other nations throughout Eastern Europe prior to the existence of the Soviet Union and before the Bolshevik Revolution. So there's that history there, that apparatus for you. And as President Trump has said, President Putin on the phone has reassured him on many occasions, I want peace, but then he'll strike with the drones and missiles, and they'll hit nursing homes, they'll hit schools, they'll hit non-military installations and outlets. There's some F-15s there, I believe, flying over that airspace, which is a regular sight there in Anchorage, Alaska, with J-Bear and the Air Force Base intact. So you see a lot of dogfighting, you see a lot of practicing happening, B-12 bombers, as well as other Air Force personnel and materials flying over that Cook Inlet, a beautiful part of the world, on an overcast day, roughly 52 degrees on this summer August in Alaska. Sometimes you have that cool weather up there, especially when it is overcast, so you might need a coat in the summertime, as that's a little spot right there. I used to run past that inlet, and you actually can see, if you look closely, Mount McKinley is right in that direction, and aptly named Mount McKinley once again after William McKinley, a fine president, a tariff president, who President Trump deeply admires. And remember, Barack Hussein Obama called it Denali, but President Trump fixed that because we should honor good people in this country and the contributions they have made to our fine country. And Alaska becoming a state in 1959, you could still meet people that authored and signed their state constitution. So it's a fun piece of history. And I wonder if our founding fathers would have envisioned that. From 13 colonies to really being a young coastal nation to Louisiana Purchase, thanks to President Thomas Jefferson, expanding us from sea to shining sea, 48 continental states in the lower 48, as the Alaskans call it. And then after they served as territories, Alaska and Hawaii both becoming the 49th and 50th states in 1959. So we actually honored, I had the privilege of working with former Mayor Dave Bronson as Deputy Communications Director. Some of our friends in Alaska are watching today, so hello to my former colleagues up there in that beautiful state. I need to pay a visit very soon, hopefully. It's a wonderful time to visit Alaska during the summer and for all ages, maybe for a family vacation, as it looks as if President Vladimir Putin of the Russian Federation has touched down at J-Bear. And you can see the beast right there where President Trump rides in the presidential limousine. A historic day for the United States, a historic day for the Russian Federation, and a historic day for the Ukrainians and even Europe as a whole. The entire world is watching this, as this could potentially, this meeting today could end 3.5 years of this bloody Russian-Ukrainian conflict, the Ukrainian war, which has cost millions of lives, civilians and soldiers, who honestly did not deserve this. And it was the aggression of Vladimir Putin that brought this on the world, but also the weakness of an autopen and an administration that brought death and destruction upon the world and created a power vacuum for those like Vladimir Putin to take advantage of. There's a clear case for that to be made. President Trump had won, as he should have, in 2020, and we know what happened in 2020. This would have never happened in the first place. And so we'll see what agreements come to the table right now. There will be a lot of discussions to take place in all of this as the red carpet is rolled out. Alaska 2025. It almost looks as if it's an Olympic pre-trial to 2028 or even the Winter Games that will be next year in Italy. But it is the big peace brokering that could potentially happen in moments from now. So stay with us here at close to 3 o'clock Eastern on this Friday, August 15th. And it's right about 11 o'clock in the morning in Anchorage, Alaska. A brisk 52 degrees this summertime, overcast, which is very common. It's generally rare to even get up into the high 70s in the summertime. Every once in a while it will, but it's really nice when that sun peaks out in the summer. They actually have to have blackout curtains when you live there as well, because once you go to sleep in the summer, the sun is likely still out there at 10:30 at night. And I want to say the sun's setting today at 10:45. I'll double check that Alaskan time. But you have to cover those shades because it'll look like 5:30 outside in any other state in the summer months. So it's really quite the sight to see. And then with winter, much less sunlight as a result of their location way up north in the world. And this is, as Kelvin King put it, who we interviewed earlier in the broadcast, I think people realize how close it is to Alaska. They made fun of Sarah Palin for, oh, Russia's, I could see it from my house, which was really a Tina Fey SNL skit, but it's really that close when you go up to Nome, Alaska. Let's toss it there live now to Anchorage, Alaska. President Putin has touched down, and President Trump waiting for him to come off of Air Force One for this joint bilateral meeting between the leader of the United States and the Russian Federation.
to a ceasefire.
Mr. President, what's your message to Vladimir Putin?
Mr. Putin, did you underestimate Ukraine? President Putin, will you stop killing civilians? President Putin, how can the U.S. trust your words?
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Let's go around here. Come on, guys.
We're still holding for a minute. The driver's here. So.
The bar is up.
We'll have to come down. We'll stay up until the motorcade leaves. Shot stays up for now.
Hey, Bill. Let me just hold on the line for you here.
And a warm greeting on the tarmac of J-Bear, the red carpet with President Trump of the United States and Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin. All smiles, all handshakes for those Kalshi voters and traders. I think it was about 10 seconds. Am I right, Mr. Producer? I think that was a 10-second handshake. So it was over that 3-second question. So make sure you go to all of the big questions and stick with us here. There's more to come on Right Side Broadcasting Network with this historic meeting between President Trump and President Putin. But in the meantime, more questions at kalshi.com/RSBN. Our great sponsor here at the network. Will President Trump say at the press conference following the Trump-Putin meeting? Will it involve Zelensky, NATO, going nuclear or not? So all those different questions that are on this wonderful trading website. And you can see it in real time right now, all those different questions of who will help attend. Will Caroline Leavitt be on hand? Will Pete Hegseth be on hand? What different groups from the cabinet on either side with the Russian Federation and the United States defense apparatus to work on all these things. And it seems as if President Trump, the commander-in-chief, choreographing those beautiful F-15 flyovers for Alaska 2025, a summit that almost looks like it could be a precursor to the Italian 2026 Olympic Games. But would it not be wonderful to have the end of the Ukrainian war leading into those peaceful Olympic Games? So Kalshi.com/RSBN, your go-to for all questions facing America domestically and internationally. Also, Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN. Settle those back taxes now and protect yourself from the IRS. Call today, don't delay. 800-357-1415. Protect yourself from the over 80,000 plus agents the AutoPen put into place. Now, President Trump assigning many of them to the border to assist with those efforts, but these great patriots here at Tax Network USA, they have accountant expertise, some of them having worked for the IRS in the past, so they just want to help you to get through all of that, whether it's business taxes, personal, or what have you. Visit tnusa.com/RSBN. Again, 800-357-1415. Do not worry if you pass that April 15th deadline. Just get it done today so it's not stressful on your person in the coming weeks and months as we get into fall football season and the holidays. Can you believe how quick August has come? This year has been remarkable. 200 plus days back in the White House. President Trump showing that he is the peace through strength president, showing that he wants domestic and international prosperity. And this is not really, as he explained it, the fight that he wants. We don't really have a dog in this game other than he wants the killing to stop. He's remained consistent on this. In fact, more consistent than any other presidential candidate on either side of the aisle for the last decade of wanting peace through strength, something that Ronald Reagan was able to do. And sadly, the living predecessors of President Trump, who served alongside Putin being in office roughly since 1999-2000, they have not been able to deter Vladimir Putin from invading former Soviet and former Russian pre-Soviet days territories, including the Ukraine. So we know now that the Ukrainian government has said they will not cede any territory. Part of the Russian strategy in all this was to obtain all of Ukraine, but they have hold of those crucial ports. And a lot of what they want in this battle along the Black Sea and geographically to increase their national security apparatus within Russia. And we know that the economy itself in Russia is very weak at the moment. And President Trump has been quite frank about this. 100% tariffs, secondary tariffs to be slapped on the Russian Federation if they don't reach some form of a peace agreement. So we might have a very long day, long evening regarding just the amount of discussion that will take place between the President of the United States and the President of the Russian Federation. But it was all smiles on the red carpet coming off of Air Force One and their respective flights to J-Bear, the Air Force base, a rather large security apparatus for the United States, and once was considered Seward's folly. For 2 cents an acre, we purchased this land, the United States, from Russia in the 19th century. William Seward serving as a Secretary of State under President Abraham Lincoln. And it turned out to be probably one of the smartest things we did land-wise as the United States since the purchase of Louisiana. The Louisiana Purchase territories that expanded ultimately our nation, which then reached coast to coast, Atlantic to Pacific. And now they call us up in Alaska the lower 48, the continental United States. But this was very important during the Cold War, and to have that air apparatus to protect the Pacific Fleet stationed in Hawaii. So a huge asset to have the beautiful state of Canada. To give you a geographic idea, as we look out towards those beautiful mountains, you could see Mount McKinley if you look very closely and kind of squint your eyes there. I used to run along that trail there where it's really beautiful along the Cook Inlet, and a nice day to jog, overcast, about 52 degrees in Anchorage, Alaska. It's truly a wonderful thing to have Alaska in the United States because of that security apparatus, because of the fishing and the hunting, the natural resources, the minerals, the oil as well, and the reserves that President Trump has put back online with the Keystone Pipeline. And remember the far left Greenpeace globalist who said, oh my goodness, this is going to create an environmental hazard. We actually saw the caribou throughout Canada and Alaska actually laying next to the pipeline for the warmth. So wildlife enjoys it as well. And even that communist former governor of Canada, remember Justin Trudeau, he was begging the auto pen, please, please, please don't cancel this pipeline because it will cost so many Canadian jobs, especially within British Columbia and Alberta and throughout the western Yukon territory. But then the auto pen allowed and gave the A-OK to the Russian Federation with their Nord Stream 2 to then bring all of that oil and gas into Germany, while Germany and the European Union president actually admitted this just a couple of weeks ago when President Trump met with her at Trump Turnberry in Scotland for all of those new amazing deals between the world's two largest economies, Europe and the United States, that they were in turn slaves to Russia because of all of the gas and oil exports, which didn't make a lot of sense because we know how Europe has been very much against this war. It gave Russia really free rein to do what it would against Ukraine and perhaps other nations in the area. On the way to Anchorage, Alaska today, President Trump actually mentioning on Truth Social that he had a phone call with the president of Belarus, and they had a very good discussion. It was productive, and Belarus really seen as that government somewhat of a puppet government of Vladimir Putin, but at least good negotiations going on and discussions between President Trump and the leader of Belarus, saying he had a wonderful talk with the highly respected president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. The purpose of the call was to thank him for the release of the 16 prisoners. We are also discussing the release of 1,300 additional prisoners. Our conversation was a very good one, and we discussed many topics, including President Putin's visit to Alaska. I look forward to being the president in the future. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So that border right up against Russia to the west, so Eastern Europe coming together with Western Russia, not far from Moscow, and we know Poland not far from there either. So some of the concerns, of course, with Russian aggression up against Eastern Europe, and if anyone can help end this conflict, it is the dealmaker in chief. It is the peace through strength president. It is Donald Trump, who has been so committed to this, ending various conflicts throughout the world, many that don't get the attention that you think the legacy media would be interested in, like Azerbaijan and the genocide that has taken place with the Armenian people over the course of countless decades. Something that's very big. You'll find that in Los Angeles, where there's many people of that descent of both nations having very strong opinions on that matter, or even in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the Republic of Rwanda, bloodiest conflict since World War II, coming to an end, and African nations and leaders meeting with President Trump at the White House. This has been a masterclass over the last 200 plus days of the negotiator in chief, the dealmaker in chief, the peace through strength candidate, someone who has done it even better than the man who really coined that term, peace through strength, President Ronald Reagan, back when Russia was the Soviet Union and facing the evil empire and communism, something that sadly has reared its ugly head as an ideology once again. Although it was put to end in the late 80s and early 90s, it seems as if you now have these people who are running on that mantle. People like Mamdani, you think he'd be running for office back in communist Russia if you could actually have a choice back then. But it's amazing to see how some people want total government control. And we'll see how the big government socialists react to all of this, because many of them peddle the same conspiracy theory that it was the Russia hoax, that President Trump was somehow a puppet of Vladimir Putin, when we now know that it looks like the former administration of Barack Hussein Obama's put out that fake Steele dossier and created Crossfire Hurricane. And comrades like John Brennan and James Comey, the autopen crooked Hillary Clinton, who spied on the Trump Tower during the 2016 campaign, her team, her apparatus doing so, that they were trying to usurp the authority of the duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. And we know this from great reporting and analysis from authors like Lee Smith, who wrote The Plot Against the President with hard-hitting facts in there when this narrative was going throughout legacy media, and a documentary starring none other than your FBI Director Kash Patel back when he was senior staff, talking about what happened during the first administration and how these individuals tried to peddle this fake narrative, including people like Senator Adam Schiff, who continues to do that on a daily basis. And he's in a lot of hot water right now because he's alleged of sharing fake intelligence documents while he was on that committee serving with Devin Nunes, who really spotlighted this during 2018 and 2019. And we know now that the senator from California claiming residency in both Maryland and California. We'll toss it there to President Trump and President Putin.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad. Thank you very much. Let's go. Come on, guys. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad.
Why should President Trump trust your word now?
Thank you, Brad. 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 Everybody get out of the room. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad.
And the American media clearly has questions, as we all do, regarding this very historic meeting today between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. And then you saw there that it was Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, along with other American diplomats and the team ready to discuss with Vladimir Putin and his team as well, including the individual who was gifted with a red button from Hillary Clinton way back in 2009, their foreign minister, when she began this Russia hoax when she was Secretary of State, someone who did a lot of damage to our foreign policy. And we'll see if we get any answers to the years of criminality of Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. They've been subpoenaed by our Congress, but I'm sure that they will plead the fifth in the process. As the Trump-Putin meeting is now underway in the great state of Alaska, the 49th state. I'd like to highlight a couple of businesses that I enjoyed to showcase while I was covering local news there at Alaska's News Source. 49th State Brewery. You have to go there if you're, and it's not far from the Cook Inlet there. Quite a delicious place where you can actually get grilled cheese crab sandwiches. It's amazing. And then you literally pull it right out of the water. If you are a seafood lover, there is probably no place better in the great state of Alaska. Those icy waters home to the biggest king crabs you can imagine, on top of countless species of salmon. And it's really delicious. It's a place where you can enjoy nature in such an extraordinary way. And as you look out on that scene there in the Cook Inlet out to Mount McKinley, really the beauty of God's nature on full display. And that's why people love it. And it's not just for the grandparents, because you'll land at the airport there and then they have books like illustrations when Grandma and Grandpa went to Alaska. And it's a great senior trip, but it's a great trip regardless of where you're at in life. Even if it's just a week and those amazing cruises that go up there, it is something to see, especially those glaciers as well. Had the opportunity to see that. And when I went over to Whittier, actually, very small town just east of Anchorage and the municipality, and just about southeast of Eagle River. We're going to go back to the president right. So hold for a moment with President Trump and President Putin underway with their meeting. But you can go out to Whittier and see those glaciers, including one of the ships that actually helped pull people out of 9/11 and save them. It honors the firemen, and it was put into retirement. So it traveled all the way from New York City when it was done with its time serving through the Panama Canal up to Alaska. It's a great ship to bring close into those glaciers, because I thought about it when I was on there, enjoying some lunch, enjoying the nature, and I thought, I've seen this boat before. And then it came over the intercom. The captain said, you might recognize this. This helped people during that emergency of September 11th, which we're approaching the 24th anniversary of that. So a great way to see now in its retirement a ship that saved countless lives in that terrible terrorist attack, now showing tourists from around the world the beauty of God's nature in the great state of Alaska. And I saw one of those glaciers actually come undone in that moment, and it's almost as if a bomb goes off. It's an incredible amount of power, and to feel the waves, even from several hundred yards back, is really a sight to see. And I've also witnessed as well, I've been on Canadian glaciers to Alaskan glaciers for hikes and different excursions. And I've seen the recession over time of those Canadian glaciers, but some in Alaska have expanded. So for the panicans, when it comes to global warming or climate change, they change that terminology. They will change the terminology when it's inconvenient one way or another. But Al Gore, one inconvenient truth is that your documentary hasn't come true. We'll go back to the President of the United States and the Russian Federation in their bilateral meeting. And it looks like audio was withheld from the pool camera there, but we can make a replay from earlier for your viewing pleasure. As you see a live shot there out towards Mount McKinley. So that's still about a 4-hour or so drive from Anchorage, the municipality itself, just north of the city. And you can go out there to Talkeetna as well, where you get on a red plane and go through the Ruth Glacier. That's quite a sight as well if you're unafraid of those single-engine planes. It's a little bit of a tough turbulence to go through there, but it's, again, a sight to see if you're a big fan of adventure and hiking and exploring this extraordinary slice of land way up north. And they actually have a place even further north, just south of the North Slope of Alaska, that's almost within that area of the world where they'll get 40-plus days of complete darkness in the winter and 40-plus days of complete sunlight with no darkness at all. That's roughly about a 12-hour drive from Anchorage itself, and that is North Pole, Alaska, which they actually decorate as if it was Santa's village. So fun for the kids to go and enjoy, and that's just north of the beautiful mid-slope area of Alaska, which is rather extraordinary. So what's interesting about this part of the world, weather-wise as well, it roughly stays between the 20s and 60s. It has that reaction to being on the Cook Inlet with the waterways, whereas if you go up into Fairbanks and such, you can have highs in the winter of -30, which is just extreme weather. So it's cold in Anchorage, but just about as bad as it is in Chicago, Illinois. So when I took the challenge of moving up there and starting my second career, if you will, in the news media, I thought, well, if there's people from the South who can go up and live in Alaska and talk about the news and different things, I think I can handle it, because there's nothing worse than a Chicago winter. So Anchorage is not too terrible. When you put it in the grand scheme of things, as President Trump is meeting with Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin, that's underway here in Alaska. You saw the backdrop of pursuing peace. It's a clear message from this administration and Washington, D.C., why they're involved. It's to be the peace through strength agenda, not only domestically, but for the world. And this is President Trump, as he put it in that press gaggle on the way to Alaska, roughly a 7.5-hour trip from Joint Base Andrews outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland to J-Bear in Anchorage, Alaska, both glorious Air Force bases, that he doesn't need this. It's not good for his health, but he wants the killing to stop. Over 1 million people have perished because of this roughly 3.5-year war between Vladimir Putin's invasion of Vladimir Zelensky's Ukraine. And quite frankly, both leaders have really fumbled this, Zelensky and Putin specifically. They have harmed countless lives because of being extremely headstrong, targeting civilians in the process. And it's sad because both the Ukrainian and Russian people, extraordinary cultures and just good people, a lot like the traditional Americans you'd find as your neighbors. And so hopefully this does come to an end, something that's been discussed in the news now for countless years. And even though President Putin is someone who is not necessarily to be trusted, as President Trump put it, did state that, their country went through a lot with this Russia hoax as well, thanks to the deep state globalists, and perhaps why President Trump and President Putin clearly have respect for one another as they came off of those red carpets. And the Alaska 2025 almost looked like a precursor to the Olympic Games, surrounded by F-15s and a flyover by the United States military and our Air Force patrolling those air and waterways. Let's do a quick playback of President Trump's comments just from moments ago.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Mr. Putin, will you agree to a ceasefire? Mr. Putin, will you commit to not killing any more civilians?
Thank you, press. Let's go. Come on, guys. Thank you, press.
Let's go. Mr. President.
Thank you, press.
President Putin, why should President Trump trust your word now?
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
We've got to go.
Thank you, press.
Thank you,
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, the special envoy who has been remarkable in so many of these negotiations. In fact, returning prisoners of war from Russia and those who were held against their will, just American citizens who were traveling there during the Otto Penn administration. He's been crucial in those negotiations, as well as the translators and their counterparts sitting with both President Trump and President Putin to continue these discussions. And it got into a little bit of a shouting match from media, but these are important questions to ask because we do know that the Russian Federation has targeted civilians in this conflict, and some of these weapons of war are quite scary, especially these drones that can fire literal fireballs from hundreds of yards away, killing civilians and military personnel in the process. It's so sad what has happened, including the digging of trenches in Chernobyl, where that nuclear reactor went off and caused radiation poisoning years ago. Even though the half-life dies off and removes over time, still a toxic, poisonous area. And those Russian troops who did that operation at the orders of President Putin, many have died and many are now very sick because of radiation poisoning, all because of this. When God willing, this does come to an end and that this part of the world can live in peace once again within Western Asia and Eastern Europe. And it looks as if all parties are ready, willing, and able to make that discussion happen, all at the behest and invitation of President Donald Trump. This was a meeting requested by President Putin. It was discussed for a number of months now as they were on the phone back and forth. But as President Trump put it, every time Putin would call him, talk about peace. And then all of a sudden, hours later, striking nursing homes, to schools, to civilians, and non-military apparatus in and around the Ukraine and along the Ukrainian-Russian border. So we will see what happens in this discussion today. Lots at stake. It remains that the Ukraine and President Zelensky stating that they will not cede any territory, no concessions there as of right now. But we know the goal of Russia was initially to take the entire country. They have failed at that. The Ukraine military fighting valiantly, mostly with the help, as President Trump put it in his first term, with javelins that he offered them. Barack Hussein Obama offered blankets and hugs and kisses and the such, and that clearly was a failure. Presidents George W. Bush, Barack Hussein Obama, and the Otto Pen all failed to keep Putin staying in simply Russia. But President Trump stopped him from moving during the first term. And perhaps we'll have that stop of that taking place now in the second term. In case you missed it, in case you're just tuning in now, it's 3:40 on the East Coast. It's 11:40 a.m. in Anchorage, Alaska, as Trump and Putin are meeting. That's now underway in Anchorage as you look at the Cook Inlet that looks out to Mount McKinley, about a 4 hours drive from Anchorage, Alaska. Let's go to a replay of the deplaning from Air Force One and the Russian Federation plane onto the red carpet at J-Bear.
Will you agree to a ceasefire?
Mr. President, what's your message to Vladimir Putin?
Mr. Putin, did you underestimate Ukraine? President Putin, will you stop killing civilians? President Putin, how can the U.S. trust your words?
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Until the motorcade leaves. Shot stays up for now.
Hey, Bill. Let me just hold on the line for a bit here.
This president can teach a masterclass on diplomacy, as you saw on display there, with our great war jets flying right over as he saluted our members in uniform, our great military, with the Air Force base known as J-Bear, which actually holds host to every branch of the military, one of the largest in our country, and one that oversees the Pacific Fleet to protect them from the air and the Pacific Command of the United States. Thank you to our sponsors here on the right side of history. Monetary Gold, one of the newest here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Grab that complimentary presidential gold guide with President Trump right on the front. Call today, don't delay. It's 800-476-7790. Bank of America just announced that the United States dollar is on the verge of collapse. That can happen with paper money. What has stood the test of time? It is your savings, your retirement, your paycheck could all be affected by this, all losing their value faster than ever. But it's these precious metals. And history tells us this, that paper money fails, precious metals are there to secure you. Gold and silver have the ultimate store of value for over 5,000 years now. That's why it's time to call my friends over at Monetary Gold. It's wealth, it's security, it's preservation. Again, call today. Don't delay in this. 800-476-7790. Call immediately to discover how you can eliminate IRA fees permanently. RSBN for thegold.com. A smart way to make sure that you watch over all of your important savings because, again, inflation, paper money, it can go bye-bye, but not gold and silver, and that's proven the test of time now for 5,000 years. Monetary Gold, your go-to, RSBN for thegold.com. When you have your financial house in order, why not get the best thing you can do? When you start your day, when you wake up, you really should have a nice glass of water, maybe two, to give yourself a nice internal shower. Now, the problem is this, that fluoride, pesticides, other chemicals can be in the water stream. RFK has been fighting for this, our great Secretary of Health and Human Services, for years and years against the big corporate and big government entities that said, oh, that wasn't going on, it's not anything to worry about. Well, Utah and Florida now passing legislation to get the fluoride out of the water. And we know that many toothpastes have that sodium fluoride and oil-based petroleum. That's thanks to places like Standard Oil, the Rockefeller family. If you want to brush your teeth with that, that's up to you. But no one should have to drink water or consume this with fluoride, chemicals, pesticides within their water. It's wrong. So this great technology at covepure.com/RSBN. Let me tell you about this. It is clear water technology. It gets rid of 99.9% of the toxins, including fluoride, in the water supply. JAMA Pediatrics just did a study with their doctors and their scientists that children drinking out of the tap water on a regular basis could actually lose over 2 points of IQ as a result of that. So no American should have to deal with what happened in places like Flint, Michigan many years ago. covepure.com/RSBN, drink pure, live pure, and look at that beautiful, concise device. You should put that on your kitchen counter or in your office den. It's smaller than any coffee maker you might have. covepure.com/RSBN. Get $200 off right now. And one of my personal favorites here, angelpaste.com. You've seen me use the original Miracle Cream right here on the network to get rid of my dry hands and have my hands glowing and ready to go, because it might be overlooked if you have that dry, cracked, nasty hands and then you're shaking hands, just as President Trump did with President Putin on that tarmac. You want the other person to see a nice, beautiful hand. You don't want to see crackled, bad, dry hand. So Miracle Cream could take care of that. But they also have additional items out of Spring, Texas. It's in the Houston Metroplex off of the Gulf of America. Christian owned. They hire veterans. It's the miracle at angelpaste.com for natural mosquito repellents and also facial sprays and items for guys and gals alike. Go check out their website. It's a wonderful group of people in the Lone Star State in Texas creating the Miracle Cream. So you don't have to worry about the products in here. They're all natural. They're healthy for your skin and for your body to absorb. Experience the Miracle Cream today, angelpaste.com. Thank you for your sponsorships on the right side of history as President Trump and President Putin are meeting underway in Alaska. Okay, it's almost 4 o'clock on the East Coast. That means about high noon Alaska time. They are 1 hour behind the Pacific time zone, which is our Golden Coast of California, Oregon, and Washington. We're going to wrap this broadcast, but stick with us. We will be with you really all afternoon into the evening. This historic moment between the United States President Donald Trump and Russian Federation President Vladimir Putin to potentially end the war in Ukraine for 3.5 grueling years. Peace being discussed. Stick with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live Show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door.